Hi, welcome to Mar Talks. I am Carrie Cavers, founder of Moms Against Racism Canada. And this month, in honor of International Women's Day, Women's History Month, and the International Day of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, we're taking a look at revolutionary mothering. And with this interview series, I feel very lucky and inspired as I get the opportunity to talk with people who embody revolutionary mothering. But before we get started chatting with our guest today, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the Algonquin speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations, on whose unceded ancestral lands I'm living as an uninvited guest and where I'm zooming to you from. I'm grateful to the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island who have stewarded this land, who have been mothering this land time immemorial, despite destruction and degradation caused by its colonizers and settlers. Through Moms Against Racism, we're working to educate moms and those in mothering roles in anti-racism, cultural competence, and decolonization so that they have the tools to dismantle racism in themselves, their families, and their communities. And together, we can make this place where we live a much more equitable place for everyone. And my guest today is also working to educate Canadians in anti-racism. I was invited to her Facebook group and was right away impressed with her and her depth of knowledge and understanding, as well as her humility in how she is one of the moderators of the group, are helping people invest in their own personal anti-racism journeys. Lissy Snowden is a 42-year-old, colorful, quirky lover of life. At her core, she is a compassionate empath who navigates the world with a desire to always lead with love. And Lissy is her grandmother's namesake and the single parent of two incredible sons, aged 16 and 18. She was born and raised in Calgary. Her father immigrated to Canada from the Netherlands in 1951, and her maternal grandparents immigrated to Canada from Denmark in the mid-50s. So basically, as she says, she is white AF. Currently, Lissy works as a therapeutic access coach, supporting parents with children's services involvement to develop, increase, foster secure attachment with their children. She also sits on the social work program advisory board at Mount Royal University, and she initiated and administrates an online group called Investing in Anti-Racism that has over 3,200, and she may correct me later because it's growing every day, but over 3,200 members, and that's where I first found her. And she recently became a member of the newly formed Calgary Police Services Anti-Racism Action Committee. Lissy, thank you so much for sharing your time with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel super honored to be here and still I'm kind of nervous, but I'm definitely super grateful to be here. So thank you for asking me.
Wonderful. So before we get started, I just want to double check where I have 3 questions to ask you. They're the same 3 questions that we ask each of our revolutionary mothers. So are you ready?
I'm ready. I guess as ready as I'll ever be.
Wonderful. And I do know, just because you are nervous, and I said I would, but I'm going to prompt you because I know doing a land acknowledgement is very important to you.
Yes.
So yes. I don't want to move ahead in the questions and lose our opportunity for that. So if that was something that you wanted to do, now would be a great time.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, so definitely it is important to me. So in the spirit of reconciliation, I honor and respect that I am privileged to live on Treaty 7 territory in Mid-fifties, which is the traditional lands of the Nitstapi people of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, Piikani, Kainai, and Blackfeet First Nations, as well as the other signatories, including the Tsuut'ina Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, comprised of the Wesley, Bearspaw, and Chiniki First Nations. I recognize that I'm a visitor to the land and that my ancestors were responsible for inflicting terrible damage to the people here. As I continue to benefit from these heinous acts, I recognize that it is my responsibility to decolonize myself to create the changes necessary for reconciliation and repair to occur. And I'm dedicated to supporting Indigenous sovereignty, and I believe in returning Indigenous lands to Indigenous hands. Thanks for letting me do that.
No, that's it. You've obviously put a lot of time and effort and thought into your land acknowledgement. And there's a few things in there that struck a chord with me. So I think I will think about that and possibly incorporate some of what you said into mine. So thank you for sharing that. So for this series, again, talking about revolutionary mothering, our first question, if you're ready, is what does revolutionary mothering mean to you?
Yes, so I'm grateful that I was able to learn from the other people that you've interviewed, because at first when I was first going to answer this a few weeks ago, I got the book, I downloaded the book, and I was like all prepared to listen to, and I was like, I don't know, what does revolutionary mothering mean? I have no idea. But now I've kind of given it my own perspective. So I said, I think revolutionary mothering means choosing to see ourselves as part of the bigger picture and understanding that we have the power in our mothering roles to positively influence the lives of others, and then being purposeful and intentional in doing so. So like when I know that lots of people were talking about kind of the status quo, and when we acknowledge that the status quo is influenced historically by things like supremacy and racism and misogyny and trauma, patriarchy, I think revolutionary mothering means to understand how we perpetuate these things through our actions, and then making the commitment to not allow them to manifest themselves through ourselves and into our kids. So ultimately, I think it's about accepting personal responsibility to create the changes necessary within ourselves and within our environments to make the world a better place, and then to ensure that we're raising our children to be capable of doing the same.
I think that is a very important point that you touched on with the personal responsibility and seeing the bigger picture, and not letting it go any further. Like to me, that reminds me of like the buck stops here kind of thing, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So then in what ways do you practice revolutionary mothering?
Well, for me, I think it started with kind of recognizing that like I'm a conduit to love. So and that my capacity to lead with love and give love grows greater with my ability to properly love myself. So I think that we as mothers are sort of conditioned to think that that we need to just think about others and do for others as opposed to ourselves. However, I've kind of learned that the more I focus on growing and changing and learning and becoming somebody that I can love and respect, that the better example I am for my kids, and the more capable I become of teaching them how to do the same and how to be a good ancestor. So I think ultimately I'm just fixing my own shit so that I'm capable of being a good mother and raising up people who are good humans. So
Well, and you do so much mothering in other spaces as well, like with the different just in your work capacity, the care that you bring, and with co-creating the Investing in Anti-Racism group, as well as now being on the anti-racism committee with the police services. Like all of that is revolutionary. It's mothering. It's like you say, you have acknowledged how you are part of the bigger picture and are going out and doing something about it.
Yeah, it was important to me because I think, that saying, be the change that you want to see. I didn't understand for a lot of years, like just how much a part of the change I can actually be. Like after George Floyd's murder, and just like researching, because I didn't know about so much racism until last year after George Floyd's murder, when everybody started speaking about it. And then I was like, how did I not know this stuff? Like, I became a social worker when I was 34. So I started learning about sort of, our or intergenerational trauma and Indigenous residential schools, everything like that. I started learning about that kind of stuff, but I never learned about like the day-to-day racism that people experience. And I just didn't know how much I didn't know. It was quite upsetting to me because I was raised in this system to just acquiesce to all systems of power. So police and teachers, and just to not critically think about what I was learning or what I was absorbing or anything like that. And then, so after George Floyd's murder, I was just like, I am so shocked that I didn't know so much stuff. And so I literally just typed in anti-racism and then learned about what anti-racism was. And then I just was like, okay, I always believe that we're better together. So I like to be a part of teams and stuff like that, and so I just made up that Facebook group because I was like, if I'm sitting here at 40, I was 41 last year, 41 years old, like just learning something huge like this, how many other people like this are in the same boat? So then I created that group just to so that I could include other people on the journey as well. And then my friend Rudy, who I used to play poker with, like a few hours after I started the group, he got on and he was like, yes. And then he started like inviting all of his friends. And so it just grew really super quickly. And I think why is because the intention of the group is to educate yourself before anything else. And I think that's the key, is because I think supremacy teaches like whiteys like me that what we know and what we think is best. And now that I understand that that's how I'm conditioned to think, now I can think a different way. But until you know these things, you can't. So I think this group is just a bunch of people who just want to learn how to do better and are committed to doing so. So anyway.
That's fantastic. And the leadership that you and Rudy bring is it's very fantastic. Look, I have definitely learned things by being a member of your group, so thank you. And I love having both of you being part of our group too.
I'm grateful to be there too, because I'm learning things from your group as well. And I so admire just all the work that you do, Carrie. Like it's really fantastic, and you're a beautiful example for all of us as well. So I'm grateful for that too.
Thank you. Okay, so our last question, and I feel that you probably have lots of thoughts on this. What advice, I mean, other than the knowledge that you just dropped for us, but what advice do you have for those who are wanting to be allies and dismantlers of racism?
I think first and foremost, it's like, stop trying to give advice. Just kidding. No, it's just like, I'm conditioned to believe that I need to insert my opinion into every situation, and that I should have an opinion on every situation. When it comes to racism, I should not be seeking to have an opinion in this. I should be seeking to learn on how to dismantle it. So I think that, I think it's a lot about understanding yourself and your ego, and how your ego helps or hinders this process. Because I remember early on in the process, my friend Adora, she called me out for something. This is before we were friends. She called me out for something, and it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, like that would have been enough in the past to like take me off the journey, because it's uncomfortable, right? Like, you don't want to be wrong. You don't want to be making mistakes and hurting people. But thanks to her, I was able to recognize that this is a part of the journey. Though that discomfort and those ugly feelings are such a part of the journey. And you have to really check your ego and be humble and be willing to make mistakes and then correct them and then move forward with the learning, and not sit in that shame and that discomfort, because that's not helpful either. So I think that that's, yeah, one of the biggest things. And just actively seeking to decolonize yourself. Like, there's so much that I didn't understand about my actions and how white supremacy influences them. And so actively seeking to decolonize myself and my practice, like even the work that I do with parents, it's changed everything that I do, because I think from a different perspective. I think like, you know what, my perspective isn't always right. I don't always, like, what I know isn't always right. So I stay open to learning and to changing, and not necessarily to changing my point of view on things, but accepting other points of view and knowing that the more perspectives we have on things, the better, and the more capable we become changing. So yeah, just that decolonization piece, and like just seeking to learn how it manifests through you, unintentionally and intentionally. So I think that's super helpful as well.
I think that's a great point. And it's something that like I talk about in the different workshops that Mar puts on, that I'm hosting, but that everybody has the internalized racist beliefs, that we've been, you know, indoctrinated with all of this rhetoric, that you can't get away from it. And that when someone calls you in, like the experience that you had, it really is a gift, because the internalized beliefs that we have, they run so deep, they're internalized, we don't know that they're there. And without somebody bringing them to our attention, kind of like walking around with the spinach in your teeth, you don't know. So it's a bit of a reframe that I try and give to people, to see it as a gift, as an opportunity to be like, oh, now I can see it. Now I can do something about it.
Exactly. And I think that's what more people have to understand, because we're so conditioned to be polite and to want to tippy toe around things that make people uncomfortable. But there's no time for that shit now, you know, like we need to make change, and we need to make it now. And so by being fragile and expecting people to talk to you a certain way, and you know what I mean, like that's just selfish in my opinion, because it's like you can choose to hear what people are saying, or you can choose to hear how they're trying to say it, and which one is more important, right? Like the lesson is what's most important, not the delivery. So but so often, like we're so fragile that we're like, oh, they're not speaking to me politely, so I can't engage in this conversation. But what you're really doing there is you're allowing your internal racism to continue to perpetuate because you're not actively doing anything to change. So yeah, that was definitely a hard one for me, especially at first, until I learned about tone policing and things like that. At first, I was just like, well, we're not going to get anywhere if we're talking to each other like that. But then I was just like, who the hell am I to tell people how to talk to other people? I think my biggest lesson is that I need to focus on changing myself and not changing other people. And so when I'm sharing information, it's with the intention to share my lessons, not to change somebody else's opinion, because that's not my job. It's their job to change themselves. My job's to change myself. And when I get caught up in thinking that I know what's best for other people is rooted in supremacy. So it's like just continually trying to decolonize. That's definitely, that's a process, but it's a good journey.
It is a process, and the white supremacy, like it has, what is the word that I'm looking for? Like been, like it lives in all of us, but in different ways.
Yes.
And it really is that process of pulling that apart.
Totally. And I think, sorry, I don't mean to continue, but I just thought of one important thing. I think that we also have to recognize how much trauma racism has caused for people who experience racism. And so I think that when we come from a place of compassion for that and understanding for that, then we become more open to hearing instead of putting our personal stuff in there. You know what I mean? So, because, you know, people with trauma, they're going to be angry, and they're going to, you know, they're going to project that trauma, and they're going to have opinions that might not that you might not agree with, but they're still allowed to have them. Everybody is allowed to feel however they're feeling, and you just have to accept it and just continue trying to grow yourself as a person, not trying to change other people on your journey.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lissy.
No problem. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I was so nervous. My mouth is so dry, but
You did great. You did great. So for anybody who is interested in growing their understanding and doing the work, you can join Lissy in her Facebook group that she co-moderates it's called Investing in Anti-Racism. And you can find it at Facebook. So facebook.com/groups/IIARYYC, because it originated at a YYC, or you can just search Investing in Anti-Racism. So again, thank you so much, Lissy. Thank you for being a champion of this work, of just, literally diving in 2 feet and getting in there and doing all of that work and like you say, taking accountability and moving forward with that. So thank you for all of the ways that now is revolutionarily mothering others. The world definitely needs your radical acts of love.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. So,
okay, well, have a great day.
Thank you. You as well. I'll talk to you later.